like to call the Rules and City Government Committee meeting to order. Please note for the record, Alderman Schandelmeyer is present. Alderman Arnett is going to join us a little bit late. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the October 7th meeting.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, legislation before the committee. Charter amendment, Board of Supervisors of Election, for the purpose of expanding the Board of Supervisors of Elections from 3 members to 5. Ms. Leahy, would you like to come up to the table and introduce yourself with your title?
Do you have the handout?
Was it attached?
I'm not sure.
I don't think it's attached, so no.
This is a response from the board of.
Okay. Yes. So is this what you're going to be referring to? Okay.
Eileen Leahy, member of the Board of Supervisors of Elections for the City of Annapolis. I'm here today to represent the Board of Supervisors of Elections in requesting that CA 222 be postponed. There are a number of reasons that the board is requesting this. We've reviewed it also in light of the Charter Revision Commission recommendation and their analysis. And the 2 main reasons that we're asking for postponement is that the current proposal does not include a mechanism for choosing the new members. The current process only allows for those to be appointed from a list generated by the central committees. So in expanding to 5, one of the goals that the Charter Revision Commission was hoping for was to expand into and allow unaffiliated members to be on the board and just to expand it. So to go ahead with a charter change without having the mechanism to implement it is something that the board considers a reason to postpone and put off and maybe put forth with a complete package. The board's not opposed to expanding the board, but just not at this time. The second reason is that the City Council recently passed a resolution, I think it's 5222, to put together a task force for review of election law. And given that they will be overlooking all of election law, that would be a reason also to consider any charter changes at that time, and again, look at it within a larger context, excuse me, look at it within a larger context as opposed to kind of cherry picking it along the way. In the handout I've given you, I've written to you about the reasons for this, and I've also included the Charter Revision Commission election statement. So in summary, the Board of Supervisors of Elections respectfully request that CA 222 be postponed.
I'd like to acknowledge that Alderman Arnett has joined us. And as one of the sponsors or co-sponsor of this legislation, Alderman, Ms. Leahy is sharing with us the request by the Board of Supervisors that we postpone action on this legislation for 2 reasons. Primarily, and correct me if I don't get this right, it does not address including the unrepresented members on the committee.
It doesn't provide for a mechanism to bring those additional members on board.
Okay. And secondly, the fact that we've created the municipal, task force to study the city municipal election laws and make recommendations. And they feel that that task force will also include, or should include, dealing with the number of members of the
Correct, and there are, excuse me, there are a number of other charter amendment considerations to be given for the Board of Elections, including things like filling vacancies and a number of things that, again, we feel would be better taken as a whole rather than just looking at this one piece at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Alderman, do you have any questions or?
As a co-sponsor, I had my own difficulties with the legislation and had not prepared amendments, but I did talk with the other sponsor, and we both agree that there's some needed clarifications in here. And so I think one of the best things the city council does is postpone action. It's our strongest suit. So I'm very amenable to the notion of postponing or even withdrawing and resubmitting after we get the benefit of the committee.
Well, I think at this point, we can postpone. I don't think we can withdraw your legislation.
Right.
But would you like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that we postpone until such time as we get a report from these external bodies to us that are looking at this very issue.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Questions? Ms. Leahy, does that meet your need to?
Yes, no, thank you. And I can assure you that it is on the list of to-dos and the things to be looking at. But again, to try to put it together as a cohesive piece so that we know how it's going to be implemented and what other, how it fits into the larger changes.
Well, it sounds like the sponsors are very open to looking at what needs to be amended to make this a workable document or not altogether.
Right. I think they'll agree that there are, we want to be able to implement what the Charter Revision Commission put forth also. So we're not trying to table it or put it back, but just kind of put it in a cohesive piece.
Okay.
Okay,
So
great.
This in electronic form?
Yes, Regina has it. I brought copies in case you hadn't gotten it, but I'll touch base with her. Oh, there. Oh, okay. But this was approved. This came from the whole board, not me.
I wasn't here yesterday. I know, I wasn't here yesterday.
Okay, your mic's not on.
All right. Anything
All
else?
right. So
Thank
there's
you.
a motion on the floor to postpone action on CA 222. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Leahy, for joining us and sharing the board's position on this. Appreciate it. Okay, going to legislative action, 02522, Revenue and Finance, Purchasing and Procurement, Prevailing Wage and Local Hiring. And I won't read all of that. Alderman Schandelmeyer, as the sponsor, would you like to speak to?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Part of my reason for proposing this was with the upcoming infrastructure projects that we have, prevailing wage has been a documented way to boost local employment in it, especially with the local hiring provisions that we have coming up. It has also been shown to have multiple benefits on addressing the racial wealth gap in the construction industry. And then finally, there's just the fundamental issue of I believe that the people who build our infrastructure should get a fair day's wage for a fair day's work. I have met with a couple times the city manager, Public Works Director Gerald, and Finance Director Dickinson. We have come up with and submitted to the committee. It is in Granicus. It's not listed in the agenda yet, but amendments to this to address some of their concerns, and I look forward to the discussion.
Alderman, are there amendments you would like for us to consider before we?
Yeah, we can consider the amendments first. They should be found in actual Granicus. I don't know if you're able to see it in yours. We use different systems here.
Can't find it.
If you search on legislation,
Of course, I can't get into the amendment, the ordinance.
What's the number on it?
02522.
Yeah, I see no, Madam Chair, I see no amendments attached.
They're not attached to the posted agenda, but they are posted in the legislative body itself. Would it be helpful if we have them physically printed out?
Or you could send it to us by email and then we'll have it.
Yeah, I can do that.
In our electronic folders,
Yeah, I can do that.
because I'm not getting it at all.
There are 5 in total.
I don't know why I'm not getting it. Oh, there it is.
Submitting now. I also just emailed it to you.
But I'm not seeing any attachments in it either.
Even when you click on the legislation itself?
Yep, there's
Hard
no,
line. Yeah. Amendments 1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm sorry. No. Just trying to point them out. But
Okay, so these are all the
Autumn
first
Barnett,
readers,
you
so
you
1, 2,
Any help?
3, 4, 5
want me to help?
amendments.
where?
yeah, I just emailed them to your Alderman account.
Okay, so I'm waiting for it to,
So what, did you send us all 5 of them at once, or?
Yes, all 5 at once, but they're labeled.
so while we're waiting for that, the discussion that I've heard principally from the finance director is that this adds a huge administrative burden for both staff and for potential respondents to our procurement solicitations. And maybe your amendments address that. When we get them, we can see. But I guess that leads to the question, is the cure worse than the ailment? What is it that we don't do now that this would fix?
Right now, a lot of our public infrastructure projects are in the hands of firms that have a checkered history of wage equity and fair wages. I understand that the city manager is currently of the belief that the free market can handle this problem. That said, a lot of the amendments address some of our finance director's issues, as discussed in the finance committee meeting, the first finance committee meeting. We don't need to bring on direct staff for a lot of these projects. It can be done through a consultant. And finally, yes, this is an investment in our future, but by investing in our future and guaranteeing that public infrastructure dollars are going to be going to skilled tradespersons that are encouraged to be hiring within local jurisdictions themselves, both in Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, we can keep these public investments going back into the community itself. Plus, it opens up a very large potential in the building construction trades career through these apprenticeship programs where folks who do not have the means or desire to attend traditional four-year university or to attend community college can get into a good paying middle-class career.
So again, what, particularly in the staff write-up that was done by former city manager Gerald, he pointed out that for one of our major procurements, we only had one bidder, and some of that, I think, was because there were other projects that some of the normal applicants were pursuing instead of the city procurement. But the staff report was fairly cautionary in terms of whether this would make Annapolis, which does not have a good reputation amongst the construction community, even less palatable. So even if the ultimate goals are ones that I think we all share, I think it's hard to not want to have equity in the system. The short-term impact, again, taking the flavor of the write-up, is we may get no bidders. And so how are we helping ourselves?
There's actually been studies on, does the implementation of prevailing wage or the repealing of prevailing wage have any impact on total number of bids? There's a study out of Ohio and school construction specifically that showed no difference when it came to the repeal of a wage bill, repealing prevailing wage bill, and public bidders. So it's every time it's been studied, it's shown they tend to stay about the same. We're also more likely to be attracting contractors that pay prevailing wage on their own without government prompting, when normally they'd be reluctant to participate in public works projects here because of the race to the bottom effect that an open bidding system like this would have.
So again, I would probably benefit by seeing those studies, but I don't have them before me. I think they could make a very strong case to support this legislation, but not having them puts me at a deficit, and I have to admit I'm more inclined to listen to the cautionary note from the former city manager, and I'm again wondering, what is it that's broken that this now fixes? I was told from the city finance director that a lot of the things that this does are already in our procurement process. So other than having the label prevailing wage, which I don't think is mentioned in our current city process, I'm really not sure what we're fixing. And again, I'm hard pressed to figure out whether the cure is worse than the ailment.
It, one, lowers the barrier on which these projects of prevailing wage a prevailing wage project would be implemented from $250,000 to $100,000.
Could you say that again? I had a hard time.
Currently, if we incorporate something with state funding up to $250,000, the prevailing wage ordinances would kick in. This lowers this down to capture smaller scale projects that we have a nasty tendency to sometimes have overrunning costs and things of that nature. We're seeing some of this in the city dock and the home and garage construction projects. Lots of studies have shown that prevailing wage repeal or implementation of prevailing wage addresses that issue. States and jurisdictions that have prevailing wage tend to have less cost overruns. They have less shifting of the goalposts overall for their finalized projects than jurisdictions that repeal it, where that is a very common thing. One of the other potential issues that we see ourselves facing is with the passing of Resolution 1222, where we said we would address and condemn discrimination in all of its forms. Well, prevailing wage ordinances are a documented way to reduce discrimination in the construction trades when it comes to pay for minority contractors.
So let's take the city dock example, because I know Alderman Gay had some concerns about Whiting Turner and some of their performances. So in fact, the city manager for us vetted Whiting Turner, and the concerns raised by Alderman Gay, which I appreciate his due diligence in looking at that, seemed to go away. So I'd certainly be happy to take the time to look at the amendments, and then I would like to talk with the staff. I would like to see the city manager and the finance director here to get their view of whether these amendments satisfied the concerns that they raised. Again, I think the goals as presented by the legislation are ones that, as a Democrat, I subscribe to. But I do worry about the SOS that I perceived. Maybe the city manager at the time didn't have it right, and I'd like to have a chance to find out from him whether he thinks these amendments satisfy those concerns.
Well, what he said in the finance meeting was he was not opposed to this per se. He does have concerns. I do believe that a lot of the amendments that I implemented after meeting with Finance Director Dickinson, Public Works Director Jarrell, and Manager Malinoff do address a lot of the concerns that they have. I'm not going to lie and say this will not be an investment. This will. But this is an investment in our future, in the future of our city's potential workforce, in a way that is guaranteed to increase participation in a good paying industry and a great path to the middle class. So we can go to the amendments now if we want, Madam Chair, or we can keep debating the general concept.
Well, I do have a couple of questions, and our city attorney is here. I'd like to find out whether, I do recall the former city manager speaking to, well, I don't know whether he spoke to it or not. Do we include in our contracts with our vendors requirements that they hire Annapolis residents, for example?
I am unfamiliar with the exact terminology, but we can get that for you and print it out and bring it up, right now.
Okay, because I do remember a question being raised about our ability to do this, or whether we were already doing it, I think.
Yeah, I'd have to really print it out and look at
Okay.
it, look through it. If you want us to do that, we'll do that right now.
I think that would be helpful, yeah. Because I'd like to know, I remember City Manager Gerald saying that we do some of these things already, and that there is a cost attached. And in the fiscal impact note, it does speak to what the county had to pay when they moved to prevailing wage.
I apologize.
But go ahead, no.
One thing I would address, it's not exactly apples to apples with the county's prevailing wage costs overall. We do have less projects that would trigger this going in. So again, in conversations with Director Gerald and Director Dickinson, they did say that hiring contractors on a case-by-case basis for these was something that we could do, so we would not see the same degree of staff costs and overall budgetary increases. Again, though, this is an investment, but it is an investment into our future of our potential workforce.
Well, I thought I heard them say that it would require additional staffing to manage record keeping of the prevailing wage by these contractors, listed in the staff report, the projects that would be included, I guess.
Yes, that would, but it would be they did say it could be a contractor staffing, not a full-time position.
Okay, so that still is additional funding position, so. Okay, if you're interested in going through these, I agree with Alderman Arnett that I would like to hear from Director Gerald and Director Dickinson. And Mr. Lyles, I wasn't asking for that information at this moment, so
It's no problem. We just want to make sure we're answering your question.
Okay.
And even if you don't read it, we're going to get several copies and you can take with you.
okay, thank you.
And Madam Chair, I do want to say if Director Gerald or Director Dickinson can't make it to today's meeting, there is no timeliness on this, so we can postpone action. If we want to discuss the amendments still, I'm very happy to do so. If we want to just postpone now, that's fine as well. I do see some value in going over the amendments personally, but
Well, I think it would be beneficial for me to have the city directors here, because you are addressing their concerns in these amendments, correct?
that is correct.
So I think I would prefer to have them here as we go through
Okay.
the amendments. I'm one of three, so.
Well, I'm looking at the amendments, and, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the amendments, and so far, they look more editorial in nature than speaking to the substance, so I'm good either way. I'd be happy to go through the amendments, but I agree with you. I certainly would want to hear back from the relevant staff. I remember the finance director saying at one point, she may have reconsidered, that this would be a heavy burden on a department that's already short of staff and having problems filling vacant spots. So I think that I wouldn't want to make any final recommendation on this till we hear from them. But I'm not opposed to taking the time now, or waiting and doing it all at one time.
Well, if you don't mind, Alderman, I would prefer to wait and have the directors here and go through them one time as opposed to going through them now and then having to address them again.
That will give us more time to look at the amendments, by the
Yeah.
way. I'm shuffling through quickly. Brooks, I don't really see anything. There's one I have a question on, but I don't see anything that bothers me about the amendments. I can support them so far, but
I think it does make sense, per the chair's time management comments of wanting them here right then and there. So I'm amenable to postponing action also.
Okay, I see Alderwoman Tierney's hand up.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to provide, and I'm speaking in my capacity as Finance Chair and also because of my experience in construction. This couldn't be the worst timing for something like this. Inflationary pressures have given us across the board a shortage of workers. And also, as Alderwoman Finlayson witnessed, 3 capital projects, you'll see them at the council meeting. These supplemental appropriations are very alarming. They're 50% increases. But I do have a data point to address your issue about inequitable and all that. There's a publication, it's called Engineering News Record. It's widely known in the construction industry, and they just came out with their 2022 third quarter cost report. And what these inflationary pressures are doing are making that's probably the wrong word, but all contractors have to raise their prices to get workers. That's non-union and union. And what they found out in this third quarter report is that the non-union increase, second quarter to second quarter, and I can print this out and give you a copy of it, actually exceeded the union increase quarter to quarter. So I just wanted, 3.6% was the union increase, second quarter to second quarter increase, and then the non-union increased averaged 5.7%. So that's a really important data point in knowing that everyone is raising their pricing to obtain better workers. And to introduce this into our equation of just limiting it to union would not only jeopardize specifically the city dock project, but would be, I have to say, a very careless thing to do right now because of the lack of bidders. So, thank you.
Thank you. So I will entertain a motion from you to postpone action on 02522.
Motion postpone 02522.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
But I just,
May-
I think, though, that very data point you brought up does make Brooks's point that the non-union wage increases were less, which may be...
No, they were more. They were
I thought
more.
you said that union was 6 point
No,
something and non was 5 point something.
No, the non, did I say that incorrectly? The non-union was more, was my point.
Oh, well, that
Yeah.
is interesting.
Yeah, right.
Well, I would like to add as a note that we, at the next meeting, at the next Rules Committee meeting where we invite, or we should invite, the Director of DPW as well as the Finance Director and Alderwoman Tierney to share the research that you've just shared with us. And then, of course, Mr. Lyles to share with us information about contracts. So we'll have everybody in the room who will have information about this. Okay, did we take a vote?
I don't know if we...
Okay, she said yes, so.
We did? All right, cool.
Thank you. All right, 03922, Administration, Mayor, Harbor Master, for the purpose of the City of Annapolis Harbor Master reporting to the Deputy City Manager for Resiliency and Sustainability rather than the Director of Recreation and Parks and generally related to Harbor Master duties. And this is a ordinance sponsored by Alderwoman Tierney. Would you like to speak to it? If you can bring your microphone closer so we can all understand.
Oh, sure. I did not initiate this. I was asked to support it if I really supported it. And after learning the reason for it, it made sense to me. I typically sponsor Title 15 legislation for whatever reason, but if the intent of the harbor master is to be sort of the gatekeeper of our resiliency, and she's handles our city waters, which is pretty huge responsibility, that it should be under the direction of the deputy city manager. Not that she needs other stuff to do, but her title is Deputy City Manager for Resiliency and Sustainability, which applies a lot to our city waters. And being under the Director of Parks and Recs, there really was not a relationship there that was necessary. You may know from being here before why it was done that way. I'm sure there was a reason, maybe the street and parks or something. But this is basically a management request, and I support it.
Well, I can speak briefly from my recall. The effort was to reduce the number of departments in the city, and we had 18, if I remember correctly. And so there was an effort to find a place for MIT, for HR, for the harbor master, and there was a fourth one. They all were standalone departments. And so, and DNEP. And so DNET was completely eliminated, and the others were put wherever the sitting administration found a place for them. Harbor Master had nothing to do with sustainability that I recall. It was connected to recreation. And today it's very different, but I'm just telling you the thinking back then. And I'm not speaking in support or in opposition to this at all. I think it's a good move, but just giving you the background. There was no planned strategy with the harbor master. And surely the harbor master's responsibilities has grown considerably in the last 15 years that we've sat here. So where it goes now is up to the council based on the service that they provide. So, Alderman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the harbor master was the only department not headed by a woman that was reorganized. It was
That's
Rick
true.
Dahlgren
That's true.
at the time.
All the others were headed by women that were eliminated. Absolutely.
I can report to you that I was at the Maritime Advisory Board when the harbor master herself spoke to this legislation, and she spoke in very positive terms. A lot of the, I'm trying to think of the right word, the embellishment that has been going on with the harbor master deals with legal and contract matters, and I think being located, particularly with Deputy Director Giles, who is an attorney, would be a very good relocation. The harbor master works very closely with Ashley Leonard in the Office of Law, and I know directly from the city manager that the Director of Parks and Recs thinks this also is a good change. So I'm certainly going to be urging us to recommend favorably on this legislation. In fact, I'll do so now. I move that we make a favorable recommendation to the council on O3922. Is that? Yes, O3922.
Is there a second?
Second.
Before I call for the vote, there was one thing that you said that is somewhat disturbing. I know that our deputy for sustainability is an attorney, but she's not the city attorney.
She's not.
And so we rely on the law department to be our legal
Yes, I did not mean to imply
Advisor.
to the contrary, but I
Okay.
do mean it's nice when you're talking about contractual matters with your boss, that your boss knows a little something about it. Of course, it'll all go. And as I said, Ashley Leonard from the Office of Law has been providing yeoman-like or yo-person-like service.
Thank you. All right, further discussion? Alderwoman Tierney?
Thank you. Speaking of the Maritime Board meeting, they took no action, but they did sort of kind of suggest an amendment or an added sentence, and I'm wondering if I could point that out. They suggested, it would be very simple to do. They endorsed the staff report.
It's attached to the legislation currently.
Yeah. The staff report says for the reason is to expand the efforts to provide a welcoming customer service experience for all water-based visitors. And the MAB suggested that we just add that in the legislation as a, well, they didn't say put it in as amendment. They said for us to consider it. And I think that would be pretty good to use their wordage here to expand the efforts to provide a welcoming customer service experience for all water-based visitors. I know sometimes the harbor master is criticized for being whatever. I don't know if this is, something you want to do. I'm just throwing it out there.
I think you're right. I forgot about that part. So it would be on the second page where we have enumerated items 1 through 9. And perhaps we can add before 8, after 8, but before 9, a new 9 that would be to expand the efforts to provide welcoming customer service experience in all for all water-based visitors. And then make the current 9 a new 10, which is perform additional duties. So I would thank you for that reminder, Alderman Tierney. I would offer that as an amendment from the Rules Committee to add a new 9 on page 2 after line 16 that would just take the language directly from the report from the Maritime Advisory Board.
I am good with that, except I am not comfortable with the suggestion that we don't have a welcoming, even though it may be rumor, it may be spoken. I don't think the place is here. It speaks to providing a welcoming customer service experience. Period.
It would read, expand the efforts to provide a welcoming customer service experience for all water-based visitors.
Yeah. And I don't know whether it needs to be water-based customers because they interface with people who don't have boats, do they not? Never?
No.
People that go off and on boats or that...
When they're on the boat, the harbor master would have authority, like if their boat is overloaded or they observe there's no safety devices, but their purview is when they're on the water.
Okay, I guess that's a nuance that just kind of escapes me, but I just don't want anything that's going to taint a negative view of the harbor master existing today.
So the expand is the operative word there, and in discussions that I've had not at the Maritime Advisory Board, in other waters, lots of times the harbor master will bring out a pineapple, which is a symbol of hospitality, and pinned to it will be a list of where you can get provisions and things like that. So that's the notion of expanding the kind of things. It's just a friendly thing to do, and it'll cause people to say, oh yeah, when we went to Annapolis, we got this pineapple, but more importantly, we got this list about where we go to the grocery store, how we get to a chandlery, those sorts of things. So that was the sense of expand. It wasn't
Okay.
Yeah,
a negative
I
in that-
misspoke, Madam Chair. I misspoke in acknowledging chatter out there, because whatever that is, this is not in any means a reflection of,
But you understand where I'm coming
absolutely.
from with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm good with that. Pineapple or no pineapple.
Right. Maybe we'll do
thank you.
something different, a pear.
Yeah. Crab.
Pineapple. Pineapple.
Ooh, get that crab away.
Okay, so the
So that was
motion
a-
on the floor, would you repeat the motion?
Yeah, the amendment
The amendment, I'm
on
sorry.
page 2, after line, I've lost it now. Come on, come back.
Line 17 would become
New line.
the new 9,
Right,
and 19 would become the new 10.
right. So on page 2, after line 16, which is collect fees, would be a new insertion, a new 9, that would be to expand from the, I got too many places.
Do you have the language?
The language would be number 9, expand efforts to provide welcoming customer service experience for all water-based visitors. And the notion of expansion is to provide a list of places that they can go to get landside services and so forth.
And in parentheses, we'll put pineapple in that. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. And so.
Maybe it'll just be on a grape.
Oh, wow. So the 9 would probably cover, the new 9 would be lines 9, 17, and 18.
Correct.
And then the new 19, line 19 would be
Would be, the
all 9.
old 9 would become 10.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Okie dokie. We lost
Okay.
a member. Okay.
Oh,
All right. Any further?
so we need to,
We need
Vote on the
to
amendment.
vote on the amendment. And so I guess we'll vote on the amendment. All in favor of the Arnett amendment, please say aye.
aye.
Aye. Opposed? No.
So now the motion is
So
to
now-
recommend favorably
As amended.
to the council as 03922 as amended. Second. Aye.
Okay, so the motion is to give a favorable recommendation to 039 with, as amended by the Arnett amendment.
The rules.
Oh, the rules, you want that to come from
Rules
the
committee.
rules, or you guys do it, the rules committee, all three of us?
Second.
So, okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. 04122. Rules of procedure, reading, amendment, and passage of ordinances, staff reports for the purpose of requiring staff reports on charter amendments, ordinances, and resolutions. Alderman Tierney, Alderman Arnett. Which of you?
Oh, so Mike Malinoff can be mad at both of us then. My objective in this legislation was to codify the requirement that city managers do a staff report to accompany legislation. It seems like that's been the practice, at least since I've been here, and I just wanted to make sure that it continued. It's not any reflection on Mr. Malinoff. You know, I know it was a little bump in the road in the beginning there, but on him not knowing it to provide the staff reports or not. But and so I did see in the final legislation there was some reformatting that restated what was previously in there, that the fiscal report is required as well. Thank you.
Alderman Arnett?
Madam Chair, so I would immediately want to offer an amendment on page 2 where it says before is heard at a public hearing. I think all legislation should have a staff report and fiscal report at the time of introduction. First of all, for those of us that aren't sponsors of legislation. I find the staff reports extremely helpful in explaining presumably the view of the sponsors, but also the view of the city of the sponsored legislation. And I find it also helpful to have a fiscal impact. Much of what we do does not come free, and I think it's important that we understand the financial consequences. So I have two amendments to offer. The first one is to change the line 4 to read no later than introduction of the legislation, rather than at the time of a public hearing.
So that is the First Amendment, so we'll take them separately. But let me ask Alderwoman Tierney and refresh my memory.
I did, by the way, discuss this with Alderman Savage as well.
Okay, did we make an amendment to this legislation?
No.
Okay. So your motion is to amend line 4 to say no later than the date of introduction
No,
of the legislation, period?
yes. And
Okay,
I'd really like to see it before then, but I think that's the cleanest way to do it, is at least by the time it comes up on the legislative agenda, it would be attached to that piece of legislation.
okay. And by date of introduction, you mean on first reader?
Correct.
Yes. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? And you did speak to Alderman Savage.
I did.
One of the sponsors. Okay. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of Arnett Amendment 1, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Amendment 2.
Moving to line number 2, which starts at line 6. First of all, I do not understand the legislation as it reads, lie on the table, all of those things. I know this is some new format, but my preference is that the legislation be in language that lay people would understand. But if I construe the impact of number 2 correctly, it would prohibit waiving a legislation on first reader to go directly to second reader, which we often do with fees. Now, maybe that's a good idea, maybe that's not, but as one of the co-sponsors, that was certainly not my intent. Quite often, we get these fee considerations or requests for consideration from the people, the fee payers, at the last minute. And this would say this would have to be tabled and go back to the Finance Committee and then come back on second reader. And that was not my intent of this legislation, and nor, I mean, discussions, and you'll have to take my word for it, or we could call him, from Alderman Savage, that was not his intent either. So I'm not really sure. Well, lying on the table seems more like a drunken cabal to me, but in any event, I'm not sure that this does not have an intent that I do not subscribe to. So I'm not even sure I would support number 2 at all. So I would first make a recommendation, an amendment, that we remove number 2. I don't see what it does, but if it does what I think it does, I don't support that.
Alderman, would you like to hear from Mr. Lyles?
Of course, always.
Or Ms. Reuter, whomever is responsible for this?
Mike Lyle, City Attorney. We're going to have Ms. Reuter address. Hold on one second, please. Begging your indulgence.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay. Yes. According to our records, who did you get it from?
Do all waiving fees go to finance now?
Oh,
They do not, do they?
I don't know, but so I can subscribe to the first part. If
Yeah.
it said introduction, that are
Yes,
automatically be assigned to.
Yeah, we have an answer.
trying to clarify
And if in the original, this is the code as it is now.
Right.
We just broke out the paragraph because it had two different subjects. In the previous, the way the code is now, it had two different items. One of them is this section that we broke out into a second paragraph. We noticed that two topics in one paragraph seem to suggest two different things. So to make it clearer for the reader what their responsibilities are, we broke that out.
We
But
had this discussion 2 days ago, I guess, in finance, did we not, about putting the staff report and the fiscal impact note together? That's the first paragraph, but that's neither here nor there. We're looking at the second one. But one of the questions now, we've gone to a new formatting. I don't know what's new, which is usually capitalized, and then amendments that are underlined. We shouldn't have both if it's new. And is that new, Alderman? Page 2, number 2 that you're talking about?
Okay. Yes, the reason it's underlined is because we broke it into a new paragraph. It's capitalized. It's capitalized and underlined because we just made this paragraph clearer to read, but we underlined it because it's a new paragraph, even though everything in that provision was included in the old code as it exists now. As we broke it out, we wanted to make it clearer to read and
Well,
understand.
we're sending a different message, because at the bottom it says uppercase indicates matter added to existing law, and underlining indicates amendments. So I think we need to go back to follow what it says here. But neither.
I agree.
That's a whole nother issue.
I agree. We can remove the capitalization and make it just the underlined portion.
So whose amendment is it then?
Well, basically,
Because it's not the sponsor, so who would
Well,
be amended?
basically, paragraph 2 is language original to the code. We didn't change anything other than to break it out into a separate section, because in that paragraph, you have two things operating. And in our attempt to make the code easier to read, we broke out the two operational provisions so that they're separate. But that is original language.
So, Madam Chair, the chair and I were trying to discuss, I thought all fees are referred to the Finance Committee automatically, and with the amendment that I offered for the first section, which says that this now all happens at introduction, that would mean that introduction of it on first reader, the assignments to the committees would be part of that. So unless fees are not referred to the Finance Committee, which I think they are, again, I would argue that that happens as a matter of course. So this second section, and I would also point out that we regularly violate the current code, because quite often on the introduction at first reader, we suspend the rules and go to second reader without it going to the Finance Committee. So I just want to make sure that 2 does not imply in any way that the council can't suspend the rules at the time of first reader and go ahead and approve on second reader an amendment to the fee.
Well, the language here that we are breaking out into a second paragraph already exists. So if you're saying that you want to modify the current code as it relates to sentence number 2 in section E that we broke out into a second paragraph, then that's up to the council, that's up to the committee. If you want to recommend that that provision be stricken from the paragraph, and we'll just leave, your amendment would be then to leave paragraph 1 by itself.
that would be my recommendation. But I do, I mean, I have seen in Robert's rules and things like that, and I admit to finding it to be obtuse there as well. What that world does lie on the table mean?
That's the language that's in the original code. We did not put it there. However, I would say lie on the table is a term of art referencing Robert's Rules of Order with respect to what happens to a bill, resolution, or ordinance that you are putting off to do something else with. In this case, we recognize that sentence 2, which we broke out into paragraph 2, really, as you talk about it, may be unnecessary because every ordinance or resolution doing anything with fees goes to the Finance Committee, but it's repeated here as though there was some discretion. So I kind of agree with where you're going, and it may be clearer to just remove that portion because it's redundant, and we already understand that anything having to do with fees or goes back to the council after coming from the Finance Committee. So you'll send it back to the Finance Committee for their recommendation, and then it'll come back to you at the appropriate time. And all of those kinds of timelines are already set out in the code in other places.
Right. So my overall feeling is number 2 in current code and as readdressed here is unnecessary. But were it to be considered just making very sure that fees all go to the Finance Committee, I would end the sentence, I would have the sentence read, any ordinance or resolution waiving or reducing fees shall be referred to the Finance Committee, period. So if it isn't handled elsewhere in the code, and it may not be, then that says this automatically is the province of the Finance Committee.
And there is a timeline to get it from the Finance Committee back to the council. All that's in the code already. So that
I
sounds
don't know
good.
whether all fees are automatically. I know in times of the budget, we have a fee
That's-
resolution,
yeah.
and that's what we've taken care of there.
May I? That's the only time, I'm sorry, that's the only time fees are approved is during the budget cycle. They're not approved in the interim period.
Well, we do. We do it. We either waive it sometimes, which is a change,
but
or
if adjustment to the
sometimes we reduce it, so it would be less than what's in the resolution passed at budget time. So
Per request from different organizations.
An
we-
adjustment to the fee
or from
schedule?
members of the council.
Yeah, or staff, really.
So I guess my recommended Second Amendment would be on line 7 to add a period after committee and strike the rest of the sentence. That way we know all fees or changes in fees are going to be referred to the Finance Committee. Doesn't stop us from suspending the rules. There's no requirement to lie on the table and come back as second reader. So that would be my second
Who
amendment.
added this? Who added the requirement
Well, it's
that
in the
fee
code
waivers?
currently. It was
'Cause
just
we've never-
reworded.
It's in the
To the
original
Maryland
language. If you go
Legislative
back to
Assembly.
page 1.
Okay, so,
It's in the code now.
okay, because fee waivers have not come to the Finance Committee in the past, at least that I've been chair.
I think it's dated, but everything lays on the table until its turn. So after we pass things on first reader, technically they lay on the table until it goes to
It can be-
public hearing and until it goes to respective committees and then until it comes back to us for second reader.
But
The
here,
fact that we don't use that terminology and even Robert's rules, from my experience, is very rarely is that ever used, but it doesn't take it away that it exists.
well, since this particular paragraph is mandatory, are you saying that you don't want this paragraph in there at all, like to mandate you to have every waiver or reduction go back to the Finance Committee? Because I would agree that it doesn't always happen.
I thought I understood the alderman
I do
say
want it to go to
we're going to
finance.
keep it
Okay.
and
Yeah.
end it after the Finance Committee on line
Great.
7. The period would come after Finance Committee.
These
Yeah.
are the three people that have the global perspective of all the fees and also the amount of money that is generated by fees or would be foregone by waiving some or all of the fee. So I think it may be redundant with other parts of the code, I don't know, but leaving it in that it goes to the Finance Committee, but not have it lie on the table until it comes back for second reader, because I think that obviates our ability to suspend the rules.
Well, definitely your comments are reasonable and appropriate. However, you are not doing it. So if you're,
Lawyers always have these however.
if you keep it here, I would just have the committee and the council recognize that from a staffing perspective, it will automatically go to finance. And so you won't see it. And I say that because some of the most recent requests for reduction or waivers have come to the council, first and second reader in the same meeting, vote. No shifting to finance.
Right.
If it shifts to finance per this mandate here, staff is then charged to, without you being involved, automatically send it to finance before it comes back to you for the second reader. But I would just say in just piggybacking on what Alderman Tierney said, we've had 3 or 4 of these in just the last few meetings where first and second reader vote, no finance review at all.
Because of the
Correct, but there's
the
another-
timeliness.
Because it was a
Another
timeliness
aspect
issue.
that I would remind my colleagues on the council, in a previous administration, we discovered that the city manager of the time forgave some $390,000 worth of fees without that ever coming to the council. And that's why I'm loath to give up the first part of the second clause. I think all fees should go to the Finance Committee. That's the body that is charged with paying attention to all the fees and how they impact the bottom line on the budget. But I think that by just ending it with a period, I'm asking this, do we not still allow the council the ability to suspend the rules? Yeah,
Okay.
Just that action has to be taken.
Right.
Just acknowledgement that that's a 2-step process.
Yep.
If you don't want to go to finance, suspend the rules. Suspend the rules first.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
so have we made this obscure enough? My second
So
proposed
your-
amendment
Amendment 2
is
is,
on page 2, line 7, after the word committee, put a period and strike the rest of that sentence.
correct.
Are we giving our new
Hey,
council staff a workout on our
page 2,
rules committee?
line 7.
I noticed Mr. Director Laplace in the audience.
I
And
hope his
have
is
to say-
next.
I have
Sorry.
to say that I think 4922 is on the agenda in error because it has not gone to the Planning Commission yet, in which case I don't think we can discuss it today unless we want to. We have nothing better to do with ourselves. If I had been here on time, I would have moved to amend the agenda to not hold you over here.
And I think I was supposed to do that, and I did forget. So, Mr. Laplace, I do apologize for keeping
He
you
enjoys
here.
watching us
But,
work
you
so
know.
much.
Alderman, is there a second in that
On
amendment on
Amendment
page
2 for
2?
4122?
Uh-huh.
I
Page
will
2,
second,
line
yes.
7.
Yes.
Okay,
Second.
so it's been properly moved and seconded and discussed ad nauseum. All in favor, that's not for the record. All in favor of the second Arnett amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so
I
we
move-
have 04122 as amended by the,
I move we recommend
Committee.
favorably, the committee recommend favorably to the city council 04122 as amended.
with the 2 Arnett amendments.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Well, that Really, Mr. LaPlace, I do owe you an apology. That was the last thing on the agenda. Thank you.
We need to do lunch.
Actually, hope I've got to talk to you some real quick after this is done. So, never mind. I'll talk to you and after a second when this is done, if that's all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, general discussion. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion
So moved.
to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. The meeting's adjourned.
Brooks, if you